Charlton Live. Charlton
Well, good evening and welcome to Charlton Live. This is the big match preview. My name is Louis Mendez. On this week's show, we're gearing up for Saturday's home game with Shrewsbury Town at the Valley. Joining me to look ahead to this massive clash for the Addicks. First up is Mr. Tom Wallen. How you doing, Tom?
I'm all right, mate. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I was going to go to Nathan first there, but I could see this is the power of the live YouTube stream that he was midway through a cough. So, I produced it in show. I was like, no, I won't go to Nathan yet. He's not ready. But now I can see he's born ready. How you doing, Nathan Muller?
Living the dream, mate. Sorry, I just had a bit of a cough. I ain't got the vid or anything like that. I just frog in me. Is it a frog in your throat or something? Yeah, one of them. Yeah. But buzzing for Saturday, mate. Absolutely buzzing for it.
Well, it's another massive game for the Addicks as they pursue that quest for a top half finish, and actually a game against the side who sit just above us in the table. Shrewsbury are in 10th. I think they've got a 6-point gap on us. So if we are to dream big and try and get that 10th place, it probably is a must win, certainly a must not lose against the Shrews on Saturday. So we will hear what Dean Holden has to say on the game in a few moments' time. We're also going to hear what he has to say about Miles Leeburn. He was asked about Miles' superb season earlier on today. So we're going to speak about that. We're also going to hear from Salopcast. Ollie from Salopcast will give us the lowdown on the visitors on Saturday. And then don't forget, of course, Saturday is Red, White and Black Day at the Valley, the Charlton Athletic Community Trust. Michael Siraj is going to join us on the show later on just to explain a little bit about what the Trust are doing with that as well ahead of the game. But, I mean, just before we hear from Dean Holden, Nath, or I should say welcome to everyone who's joining us on the live stream as well on YouTube. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't done already, and get your live comments into the chat as well. If you've got any questions to ask us or any points you want to make on what we have to say ahead of this massive game. But Nathan, it's the big one, the one we've been waiting all season for. I can barely contain myself.
Well, literally, it's the first one on the calendar I look for. It's probably everyone's probably thinking exactly the same. To be fair, before we got on, I literally knew all day it was Shrewsbury, and then as we came on, I was like, "Who are we playing again?" But that's just no offense to any Salop listeners, because I know there's plenty of you bad boys out there. It's mainly because obviously the end of the season, lull and whatnot. But it's another time to go and see your lovely faces again. And hopefully, I'm just hoping to see some action for maybe Aaron Henry or something like that. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it'd be nice to see some of the youngsters get some minutes.
Yeah, and we should get this out of the way before we're joined by Ollie from Salopcast. But considering Shrewsbury are like, other than the time they got to the playoffs and obviously beat us, they're like perennial strugglers in this division. So it's remarkable how well they've done. And it just goes to show how a club with what clearly would be a much smaller budget than ours, and certainly a much smaller fan base than us, run in a slightly better way, can achieve at this level, and just makes us look even worse. The fact that we're 6 points behind them at this stage of the season, Tom.
Yeah, and I think it's what we're at risk of becoming, isn't it? Like you say, their playoff run that season when they beat us and got to the final was, as you said, above expectations. And apart from that, being a stable League One side is possibly what's expected or what they want to achieve, certainly at the start of each season, maybe making a push. And realistically, that's what we've done for the last 3 years now. And obviously with our history and what we like to think of ourselves as a club, certainly over the last 30 or 40 years, we expect to be better than that. But realistically, when you look at that, we're not. As you say, they knocked us out of the playoffs. They're now above us in the league. This is now the sort of team that we're having to compare ourselves to, sadly. And that in itself is depressing. I was trying to find ways to get excited about this game, and I hadn't come up with any. And if I wasn't looking forward to it already, you've just made it even worse. So, yeah, I'm going to be a load of fun on this podcast because, I am struggling to get through the rest of this season with anything other than just get it done, to be honest.
Well, let's try and find a reason to be excited for Saturday's game. Dean Holden was asked about the squad ahead of the match. Don't forget, we've had a couple coming back from international duty and for a little preview on the game in today's press day.
11 after the 90 minutes and squad this week generally, plus the two guys, Jojo and Terrell, away on international duty, and apart from Jojo playing head tennis with a set of crossbars, how they both did a comeback all right? I'm
fine, yeah, good chat with both of them this morning. Jojo obviously didn't get minutes, which he'll be disappointed with, but at the same time it's a positive for him to be back involved in the squad after the disappointment of missing the World Cup through injury. You know, so credit to him for that, to pulling himself off the canvas and getting himself fit and going back with the squad. Terrell slightly different, played 290 minutes, helped qualify his team for the first time ever. I think he was saying for the Gold Cup in the summer, which is what he was saying. We had him up talking to the players this morning to explain what the situation was. I think it's their version of the Euros. So a big moment out in Miami this summer, which he'll be really looking forward to. But yeah, he came back yesterday morning. He landed just before lunchtime yesterday. His sleep pattern didn't really get affected while he was away, so it's not like he's jet lagged or anything like that. So he's fit, and he'll come back into the squad. But the guys that you mentioned from the game last week, no real issues. You get the one or two that I've spoke about previously. Certain players obviously can only train certain days of the week through historical injury situations, all that sort of stuff. But no, nothing really to be too worried about.
And Shrewsbury at the Valley on Saturday, our second home game in a trot. They managed to lift themselves into the top 10 with an impressive run early in the new year, but they've had a little bit of a wobble in March. And you'll be expecting a tough game, I'm sure. And hopefully you can give the Valley crowd a much needed home win.
Yeah, obviously that's the target for sure. It's a good game for us. I mean, I know a lot about the club. Obviously played there myself for a period of time. Steve, great to see him back healthy and doing what he does best. Did a really good job at Bristol City, getting them out of League One, and I think the double with the Johnston's Paint, I think as it was then, before me and Lee went in, and so great to see him overcome his sort of health issues that he had post COVID, and yeah, good to see him back on the touchline, and Albie as well, his assistant, that player that someone I played with at the beginning of my career, and then ended up coaching him at Bristol City. So it'll be good to see them guys. Know a lot about the team. Personally know one or two in there as well. So a big challenge for us. They've had a really good season. If you think about the seasons previously, they've struggled a little bit down the bottom end of the table. So a big, strong unit, full of energy and running and some real quality as well, actually. So yeah, of course it's a challenge for us. They're a team just above us in the league, aren't they? So we spoke previously about getting ourselves up to that sort of top 10 part of the division. It's for that reason. It's obviously a big game for us.
There we go. That's Dean looking ahead to Saturday's home game with Shrewsbury. Then, he's saying it is a big game for us in terms of the top 10. I mean, can we take that as something to build for the rest of the season? If we get top 10, will the players and Dean look at that as an achievement since when Dean came in and say, well, we probably finished as high as we could since Dean came in, and that's something to aim for?
Potentially, I think. I'm not being horrible, but I think if your ambition in life is to finish 10th in League One, then yeah, this doesn't really fill me with its inspiration. But I think considering the circumstances we were in, and when Dean came in, I think you've got to try and put a positive spin and keep the players engaged and stuff, because otherwise it will just end up being one of those sort of end of season lulls that we always had in the Premier League, it seemed, where we just didn't really turn up when we were safe. So makes it a little bit exciting. Yeah, listen, I'm gonna want us to win on Saturday, yeah, but I'm not going to be distraught if we don't. I just think he's got to try and keep the players focused, isn't he? He's not just going to go, well, the season's done, we'll just go through the motions. And whatever happens, happens. We could lose 5-0, we could win 5-0. Guess what's going to happen? He ain't going to do that, is he? Banner if he did though. But I just think he's got to try and keep him. See that little smirk there, Walling. But yeah, well, I just think he's just got to try and keep it focused in there. He's got to try and make us still go. I've still got to travel an hour and a bit to get there, which I still will because the Shrewsbury Charlton game is huge.
Yeah, it's not quite the red hot derby we used to have at Gillingham, of course, but this is as exciting as it's got in League One pretty much this season, Tom. 4 games unbeaten, which is nice, but no win at the Valley since mid-January. So, I mean, there's hopefully one of those runs is going to end on Saturday. But, I mean, that lack of home wins, and again, this is probably a serious point, like, considering season ticket renewals are coming up, if you're serving up performance after performance without a win at the Valley, that's going to put off fans, and I imagine there's quite a few who are already wavering ahead of next year because there's very little for people to sort of cling on to at this moment in time. So that does need to be put right between now and the end of the season, because season ticket holders are obviously, in terms of the financial money that they put into the club, are extremely important, and you need to entice them to come back.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's a difficult one, and obviously they haven't announced the prices yet, as far as I'm aware either. But in terms of what you were saying to Nath there about, is top 10 an ambition that you can actually kind of have some pride in from the time Dean Holden's come in, obviously not over the season, but for him, maybe that is a target. I think this other point is as valid in that, yeah, you have to look at what you can get out the rest of the season. And what you can get out the rest of the season is things like Nath said, people like Aaron Henry and some of the youngsters getting more game time. I think that's a positive. Definitely trying to get more people through the doors, or at least the same amount of people through the doors, is key, particularly with what Thomas, if he's still here, whatever, but any owner is obviously going to want to bring in more revenue. So that is important. And you look at some of the games we've had, you think of that Plymouth game way early on in the season, you think of that mental Ipswich game we had. There has been the odd good day down at the Valley, but ultimately you want to go down there and you want to see your team win. And I think recently, I think, as you said, we're not losing a lot of games, but we're also not winning them. I think the problem, or the frustration for me going each week, is we're throwing these games away. You look at the goal at the weekend, so basic, so easy for them to score, and I don't feel like we're very hard to beat there, and that's been difficult. So, yeah, that's something we need to address next year. I can't remember a time we've ever got promoted where that wasn't predicated or based on very strong home form. You need a good home form, and then you need to supplement that with the odd good away day. And we just haven't had that enough this year. And I think if we had, I don't think we've been good enough as a squad anyway to get up this year. But that's something that needs to improve. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with prices as well. And yeah, you have to hope that they bring people back, because, again, bigger crowds does make a difference as well in terms of making that home form stronger.
Yeah, I mean, Planty's put in the comments, I am happy to see short-term goals set for 10th, but I'd rather try and blood inexperienced youngsters as a priority. And I guess that is the balance that we need to find now, because if we do bring in, we're seeing Dan Carney probably come in and struggle. For example, like he struggled away at Cambridge. That's one sort of headache where he doesn't want to overexpose him to first team football, but at the same time, he's only going to continue to struggle at this level if he doesn't get his chance to try and build up a little bit of momentum, like we're going to see with Tyrese between now and the end of the season. So, I mean, at what point do we start saying, right, Dan has to start every game now? Is that only the last 2 games? Does he do that coming off the bench for the next few? I don't know how you'd see that, Nath.
Well, I think firstly, if he's going to start a game, he's got to put it in training. I still think just because we're at the end of the season, I don't think we should be giving him, and that includes Henry, who I want to see a lot more, just giving him a starting berth just because he's a youngster. I think he still has to earn it. And if he does come in, I just think it's an ideal time, because when you're bringing youngsters in, they're going to make mistakes. Jez makes mistakes. Miles makes mistakes. Every youngster is going to make a mistake, because that's the only way they're going to learn. And you'd rather them get the mistakes out of the way. They're not going to be mistake-free. No one is. But you'd rather them get that out of the way this season when there's not a lot to play for. There's not a lot of pressure on them, and they can play with it. They can express themselves a little bit more. So, yeah, I'd like to see that. But at the same time, I think we've got to have a balance where we're saying, yeah, right, you've earned your chance to start. Have a go. See how you get on. Make a mistake because it's going to happen. But yeah, there's, if it's 1-1 and Kanu comes off the bench and misses a sitter, nothing's going to happen. Whereas if we was, in the chasing playoffs and then we're going, no, start Kanu, and then he does it, then obviously you've got bigger price to lose it. And I just think now it's the time, but at the same time, don't let them just get it because we can. They've still got to earn their right to play.
Andrew says, I'd like to see a Leeburn brace, Campbell ripping them up and Jez Raksaki scoring. Sam says, I don't want to see any changes if the lads are all available unless Dean wants to use the under-23s to give them an opportunity. I mean, is there anyone, looking ahead specifically to Saturday's game, obviously we're coming off the back of that frustrating draw with Wycombe, but again, as we said on Sunday, you sort of look at it as probably overall a promising performance, with our usual downfalls in that we didn't take chances when they came and we gave away a goal. So in terms of changes, I'm not sure there's anyone I'm desperate to see come out of the side based purely on that. And, on that bench, Dean didn't see anyone fit to come off the bench last week as well. So it does suggest to me that he was quite happy with the starting lineup he chose, Tom.
Yeah, and I think, again, it comes down to what we've spoken about this first 15 minutes. What is Dean's goal here? If Dean's goal is to get the highest position that we can, whatever that is, then you play your strongest team every week. If Dean's goal is giving experience to players that wouldn't usually get it, then you blood your youngsters. If Dean's goal is, I'm going to focus on the players that are here next year, then you're dropping the likes of Jez because he's not going to be. But then you risk poor performances or potentially less exciting performances. So Dean's clearly got his goal and then he has to pick a squad based on that. I think in terms of performance, you're right. I think there were decent performances and decent performances I thought last weekend from players that perhaps haven't delivered enough. But again, nothing that blew me out of the water or anything like that. So yeah, it's a difficult one really. Like you say, there was nobody on that bench that he felt could come on and change that game enough to bring him on either. So clearly he is thinking I'm going to keep my strongest 11 out there if that's what he thinks that was. So I think it's very much driven by what his goals are between now and the end of the season. What we got 8 games left. So he'll be deciding that and basing it on that. And yeah, I think just in terms of performance, I don't think we need a whole host of changes. But as I say, depending on what his goal is, that might make some changes and that might affect it.
Well, evening to Finchy, Charlton Live royalty joining us. Says first time watching live on YouTube. Great work. Goals have to be set for the end of the season. If players do not achieve them or lack the desire to achieve them, then move them on. And obviously, there are, as we often say at this point in the season, plenty of players who are playing for their, chance to be at the club next year. Although if they all of a sudden pick up for the last 8 games and they've been terrible for the rest of it, that does pose its own questions as well. Dan said, would you reckon about 4-3-3? Morgan sometimes filling in at right back, allowing Sean Clare to drive, has really pointed out to me. Is that a tactic you can see working for us? I mean, Sean Clare has been a player who's very sort of inconsistent. Has his little drives going forward, which do sometimes work for him defensively, can get caught out. But asking Albie to sort of fill in there, is that going to work for us, Nate?
Well, I know Garner tried it earlier in the year, didn't he? More like a quarterback. I think technically Albie can do it. And I think when we're in possession and we're recycling possession, he can do it. I think the only problem comes about that is then on the transition and someone then attacks Albie down our right-hand side. So, I mean, it can. I think if you're playing against teams who are playing a low block and you need someone to try and pick out a ball, then I think Albie could do it. But I don't think we'll be seeing him at right wing back. But then Sean has got the the agility and the pace to get further up the pitch. I think looking at the team, I think I was looking. I'd be interested to see if Egbo can fix. I think it's a game that he could probably start. But like Tom said, the balance that Dean's got to have is blooding in youngsters, but then you want to keep that winning mentality. You don't want to go into the new season or go into a summer when you're like lost like 5, 6, 7 on the bounce or whatever, because then you've got to try and encourage people to join the club as well. So I think he's got a hard balance to find. But for me, I think, like I said with Albie, I wouldn't say as structured of him playing there, but I think Albie's one of those players that he'll pick up pockets deeper. I think he's a proper deep line playmaker. He's not one who's in that final third coming onto things and playing with his back to goal. So if he's got the time to do it, Albsy, then yeah, crack on, because we know he's gifted.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, you probably remember early on in the season, someone tweeted in asking if anyone was going to sort of lay their reputation on the line and nominate Albie Morgan for being Player of the Year this year. Obviously, you decided to take such a decision. Regretting that now, or are you voting Albie Morgan Player of the Year?
I mean, I'll vote it because that's what I said I was going to do. But I don't regret the decision. I'm disappointed in how his season's turned out, for sure. And when I said in my last answer that there were players that I thought were better on Saturday, he was one of them. I thought his tracking back was better. I thought largely his passing was better. And then just as I was thinking that, he misplaced a pass to one of their players. But it's been the same old story in terms of his lack of consistency for me this year. There are times where he looks brilliant. And then there are times where you feel like he's letting himself down a bit. I think there has been a gradual improvement again. I don't think it's enough. And I think he still needs to add more goals to his game. And until he does that, I don't think he is immune, despite having come through our youth system. I don't think he's immune to being up for sale and for making a move, because I don't think he's delivered enough. But he's still someone that every time he's selected, I'm kind of willing him to do well, not just because I said what I said, but because he's a player I just really like and I know what he's capable of. So in terms of do I regret it, because clearly he's not going to win Player of the Year, of course, but he's a player that's got that capability in him. I'm sure he's got a Player of the Year season in him. He just needs to find that consistency and a few goals. And that could be the difference, between where we are in the league now and the next step as well. We said the same about Fraser, maybe less so Dobson. But whoever has played in that kind of attacking midfield space, Payne came in with a reputation for scoring a few goals at Swindon. Okay, a level below, hasn't really done it. It's been the problem. We've relied too much on Leeburn and Raksaki primarily to get goals, and that's why we're where we are. So, yeah, disappointed for him. I'm glad he's got plenty of game time. It's going to be interesting to see what decision he makes in the summer, because, as I say, he's not. He shouldn't just be kept just because he's come through where he's come through, but he's played a hell of a lot of games for us over a lot of different managers. So he must be doing something right. We just need to see it more consistently.
Yeah, I was saying to myself on Saturday during that game against Wickham that this must be the fourth season probably where Albie's played a consistent amount of games. I think up until last year he was never starting more than about 13, 14 in the season, but I think he would have topped that both last year and this year now. But in all that time between us, we still can't decide if he's actually any good, which probably sums up how he's been for us. And if we're still thinking that at this point, is he going to be part of a promotion winning squad, which is a question we always come back to, and the answer is obviously no. Unfortunately, unless he ups his game, which he desperately needs to. Now, someone who could well be part of a promotion winning squad, hopefully with us, rather than moving elsewhere, is Miles Leeburn. He got his 10th goal of the season against Wickham last week, third in 3 games as well. And Terry asked Dean Holden just to speak about what a great season he's had so far.
3 on Miles, but for the young man to stand out, it's been a standout season generally so far. I think his goals per minute stats, and I'm doing this by myself, so it could be wrong, but I think he's up there with the top in the D. He might even be second in that stat in the league. Obviously, not bad for a 19-year-old, even though he's still learning, probably still growing.
Still growing. Wow. I saw a picture. He stood with a great, beautiful picture one after the game. He stood with his mum and dad and with his man of the match, and he's bigger than Carl now, isn't he? So it shows you what the size of him. I think, 3 and 3 is a good return. He'd had obviously the little niggles we spoke about. He's still growing into his body. Kept coming off at Cambridge the week before and then starting in the next week. So there's all these things to take into consideration with Miles, but really pleased with him. Great temperament. I find myself saying that again a lot about the youngsters, but just wants to keep improving. Just can't get him off the training pitch. Wants to keep improving on his game. He's looking at best practice in terms of strikers around the country at different levels. And the more you talk about one player, the more it puts pressure on them, obviously. But you've asked me the question, so I'll obviously answer it. So, no, I think he's an exciting young player. I think, I think what you're alluding to there, I was told myself, I think the most goal involvements throughout the divisions as well. So it shows you he's not just, he's not just one goal scorer or a target man or someone that runs in behind. He's got different elements to his game. And of all them elements in his game, obviously he needs to, through game time and training, will keep improving. He's nowhere near the finished article, far from it. But he's a very, very, very exciting young player to work with. I've got to be honest. He's one when I came into the job, you're kind of looking through the squad, going, I wonder what he's about. Once you get under the bonnet and you work with him day to day, and it's great to come in every day and work with these guys.
There we go. That's Dean speaking about Miles Leaburn earlier on today, and I mean he has had a remarkable season. We will keep him in the summer, Nath, because the better he gets, the more I get concerned.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you, well, I can't say that with certainty, to be fair, but I think it'll be. I think he knows he's developing. I don't see why he'd want to go. I think if you look at, listen, I'm not comparing Mason Burstow to Miles Leaburn because Miles is a lot more of a complete player and a lot more advanced, in my opinion, of Mason. But Mason can still have a good career. You know, he's still developing, but I think he knows he's developing well. He's getting games. Why would you go somewhere and hardly play or be a bit part player? He knows he's going to play here. He's still developing. He lives locally. You know, he's at a club where his family are. So, but that's saying that if someone comes in with a ridiculous offer, you know, a club can accept it, but the player's got to want to go as well. You know, it's not like if you're forced to go, but you're going to get interest. You know, no matter what happens, whoever we produce or whatever good player we have, you're always going to get other teams interested when you're playing well or when they're doing well. That's just the nature of the beast. We just hope, you know, that we can see him, you know, progress further. I can't envision him in his whole career because I think he'll go a lot higher than League One. I don't know if we'll be following suit, but I know he will be. So yeah, I'm quite confident he'll be here in the summer anyway.
Yeah, and well, fingers crossed. I guess a lot of that will come down to the ownership. We'll speak about that news about Peter Story staying on until the end of the calendar year now. Later on as well. Hi to Jonathan West from the Charlton Upbeats. It's his birthday today as well, so massive happy birthday to you, Jonathan. I hope you're really enjoying your day. Ben said, our very own Ben Cloak said, Albie Morgan, 138 appearances. How long do we wait for him to become consistent? Because yeah, I mean that's the fact. We've gone this long now, and there's still no sign of it, unfortunately. I did say we'll speak about Peter's story then. So Tom, I don't know if you saw the news earlier today. It's been confirmed that Peter's going to cling on now at least until the end of the calendar year. So considering he was sort of working for Thomas at the same time, sort of doing due diligence for Mr. Mark Spiegel, who none of us really know who he is. Would you read into that? Do you think that means the takeover's nearly done? The takeover's miles away. He's doing such a great job. Thomas wants him to stay. Thomas is so bored of, you know, owning the club that he just wants someone else to deal with it. Which way? What do you think that means?
I lean more towards that last point. I don't think I'm going to put my money on the line in terms of where the takeover is. I've got no idea if this makes any difference to that. I think just based on what Lewis said on Sunday's show, I think it was more around the forum and the conversations he's had with him that it seems like there's an element of professionalism coming back to the running of the club since Peter's come in, and relatively understandable given Peter has worked in football before, whatever his reputation and whatever might have occurred at some of those other clubs. You know, he's been in football and he knows how clubs work. So there are elements of that at least that are positive, but you know, I'm not going to be dancing down the streets just because he's here. I think we all know that the most important thing is that some element of takeover or investment happens before the summer, because if it doesn't, then next season potentially is a write-off as well before it's even started. So, yeah, if he can facilitate that, if he can aid that, then obviously that's a good thing. I assume he'll be here to work out things like pricing for season tickets, etc. And maybe there are other initiatives that he can start next season. But yeah, I think obviously I haven't seen too much personally about what he's been like, but going off what people have said, it sounds like there has been some positive differences in the background at least. But as I say, I think the most important thing for all of us is that investment that we get in for the summer, because we need an overhaul yet again. And as I say, if he can be a part of that, fair enough, because the more football people that do it and the less owners' sons that do that sort of stuff, the better, really.
Yeah, fingers crossed that's the way it turns out. But like I said, we're still getting to know what he's about as well, I guess. I was thinking earlier today, Nath, like, is there any chance we're already behind schedule in terms of next summer? Because if you know, we're currently stuck with Thomas until Mark Spiegel says otherwise and has bought the club. But a lot of clubs will have, you know, I know Dean says that work has already started, but you know, tapping up players, letting them know what sort of wages we're going to be offering. If we're not in a position to do that yet because we don't know who's going to be the owner, there is a reasonable chance that we're dropping behind others already. There's teams at the top of this league who will have big budgets, and at least a couple of them aren't going to go up. You can see Sheffield Wednesday faltering a little bit. Ipswich are outside of the top two, based because Plymouth have done really well. There's probably a couple of big teams like Barnsley who are doing well, Bolton and Derby. At least 2 or 3 of those are still going to be in this division next year, and I imagine they've already started planning themselves. So, because we're not in a position with our owner to do that, does that mean we're behind schedule already?
Well, I suppose it will depend on what the budgets are. I mean, you would imagine Soundgarde would have done regardless of a takeover. He would have had a budget for next year in mind, whether that's a quid or 100 million. I know it's not going to be the latter, but he would have had some sort of budget for them to work with anyway. And if this takeover does happen, or unless the new takeover, they're going to give them a massive transfer budget, then yeah, we probably could be behind. But I would say that they're probably in around the same level, I would imagine, if they're already talking to players or they're already in line. I know Dean's come out and said about the specific players he doesn't want and does want, which is a fair comment, to be fair. And I think what we need to do next year is focus on the fitness as well. As much as I love Cess, I think if you're having players that can only train certain days a week, I just think we need big, strong, reliable players. So if that's what Dean wants, he would have had to have done some research, or the scouting network, or whoever that is nowadays. They'll have to do something. So maybe we might be a bit behind, but I don't think it would be stalling like anything. I don't think we were just sitting on our hands waiting for something to happen, because on the Peter Story thing, the only thing I can think of is, I'm not saying the takeover is going to go through, like I've been saying this for years, but the only thing, it makes sense a little bit, because even if Mark Spiegel or this new takeover happens tomorrow or in May or June, he's going to need someone he can trust and knows football. Otherwise, we're going to have to start again, get a new CEO in. And it's that stability that we haven't got. So I think that it makes a little bit of sense, whether or not he'll be a long term, or if it's just that interim period until we get someone in. I don't know, but I think we'll still be doing our transfer dealings, but I'm not expecting big budgets. So we would have had to have a budget in mind anyway, because of all the players that are leaving anyway. So
yeah, certainly. I mean, I see Dean has already said that he's getting pre-season sorted in terms of who we're going to be playing. No names have been released yet in terms of teams, but I mean, I guess that seems a bit progressive. I'm sure the last few years we've seemed to announce our friendlies really, really late. So at least the fact that they're sort of down on paper now, and Dean's obviously going to have a real good go of doing what he can within the restraints that he will have to try and make the best of it. So yeah, looking forward to pre-season, and we can get our hopes up once more, Tom.
Yeah, for at least pre-season, maybe the first couple of games at the very least. But yeah, you're right. I would have said the same as you. It seems like the last few seasons it's taken a while to get that sort of stuff organised, but he seems to be fairly insistent on doing that. I think on Dean, and it'll be interesting, maybe Terry will ask him at some point, but I think if the investment doesn't come, and if it's a tough summer, how long is he gonna pursue it? Garner came out, I think, fairly soon after sacking, maybe more recently, I've read it as well, about what he was promised and what actually happened and what it was actually like when he came in. And I think, again, it will probably all depends on Spiegel or whoever comes in and gives us some investment. But I think it's not necessarily that Dean will just leave if he's not given any money, but he wants to be given what he's told he's going to be given, and know what those parameters are that he's working within. And you'd hope, as you say, that he knows those now, because otherwise we probably are going to fall behind, because we can be for example, we know for a fact we're going to need someone on the wing now because Jez is going back. How much of that work's been done? How many players have we started talking to? What's been happening? We just don't know. And until we do, then it's very difficult to get an understanding of how we're going to perform next year. So yeah, it's a pre-season, that first game down at Dartford. I'm looking forward to that more than any of the games between now and the end of the season, I have to say, provided there is a Dartford game this year.
Yeah, Ben Hodges says pre-season, those heady days before the transfer deadline, when the hope silently spreads its infection through our body. And then he forgot to add, and then it very quickly dies soon after that deadline, of course. Right, we're going to have a quick break here on Charlton Live. Anyone who's listening who runs like a local business or anything, we're thinking that as of next season, we're going to open ourselves up for a bit of sponsorship. So if anyone wants to have their sponsorship on our podcast and on our YouTube channel, get in touch and we'll have a little chat. We're going to have a quick 30-second break, then we're going to hear from Michael Siraj from the Charlton Athletic Community Trust. Right, welcome back to Charlton Live. This is the big match preview, looking ahead to Saturday's home game with Shrewsbury. In a few moments' time, we're going to hear from Ollie from Salopcast. Hopefully, he's going to join us to discuss all about Saturday's visitors. But Saturday is also a very important day in the Addicks calendar. And it's the first time in a long time, actually, we've checked in with the Charlton Athletic Community Trust. Something that we're all very proud of course, as fan base. Saturday is Red, White and Black Day. So Dr. Michael Siraj at the Charlton Athletic Community Trust joined me earlier in the week to explain what that is all about. Us now on Charlton Live is the Charlton Athletic Community Trust Head of Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, Dr. Michael Siraj. Michael, thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, it's that time of year again. Red, White and Black Day has come around this Saturday. Why don't you tell us a bit more about what the day's about and what you've got planned?
Great stuff. Okay, well, firstly, thanks for inviting me. It's really great to be here. A little bit about Red, White and Black Day. Red, White and Black Day is a celebration. It's a celebration of the wide-ranging work that both the club and the trust do together to promote equality, diversity and inclusion. It goes back a very long way, but what's particularly special and unique about Red, White and Black Day is that it's been running for over a quarter of a century, and it was set up by the fans in the early 1990s. And now that's incredible. That's really forward-thinking, progressive stuff. What's also unique about it is that the fans in the club got together with the local authority, Greenwich Council, as it was known at the time, and put together this really sort of cutting-edge program to look at and tackle discrimination. Now, that's grown quite significantly over the years and now embraces a much wider agenda. And this year, for Red, White and Black Day, we're really delighted to be working in partnership with both the University of Greenwich and the Stephen Lawrence Day Foundation to commemorate and celebrate the life of Stephen Lawrence.
Yeah, and obviously that's quite significant as well for our local area. So what else has been going on this week in terms of for Red, White and Black Day?
Okay, well, part of the programme, part of the aim and objectives of the programme is to raise awareness and understanding of a range of different issues related to equality, diversity and inclusion. And we put together an online panel discussion that's quite sort of quite unique in many ways. And we were really pleased that we had buy-in from the players. So we had Sean Clare, Michael Hector, and head of player care, Tracy Leeburn, with the brilliant Charlotte Richardson hosting an online panel discussion looking at football and equality. And it was really such a really passionate and really sort of open discussion about the sort of experience of discrimination, how it makes you feel, why it's important to sort of address these types of issues. That was on Monday. So that was sort of from what we call the lived experience of the players. Then on Tuesday, sort of slightly different context, different sort of perspective, we had another panel hosted by the University of Greenwich, Dr. Leroy Henry. And on the panel, we had the FA special advisor on EDI to the chair and CEO of the FA. That's Paul Elliott, CBE. we had Sundar Katwala, who is the director of a think tank called British Future, and really brilliantly pleased to have the CEO of the Stephen Lawrence Day Foundation, Jess Neal. Now, this sort of panel discussion come from a different perspective. So the first one with the players, from the players' point of view, from their standpoint. The second one looked at equality, diversity, and inclusion from a sort of organisational perspective. So we had two different sort of viewpoints to look at football inequality, and really great conversations. They both flew by.
And why do you think it's important for not just, I guess, the community trust, but also the club as a whole to be shown to be active in these areas? And what do you think they can achieve?
Well, the club has such a great reputation. You know, I go up and down the country and I work with different clubs and I work with the EDI leads. And, you know, I'm really proud to say I'm part of Charlton Athletic, and everybody says to me, Charlton Athletic, the community club, the family club, it's got that reputation, you know, and that's thanks to the supporters all those years ago, setting up Red, White and Black Day and a unique project. And it's important to continue that work. You know, we know there's been a range of social issues that have sort of emerged over the last 3-4 years that's really thrust EDI up the agenda. So it's really important to keep raising awareness, keep raising understanding, and to keep really EDI in the and it's part of the fabric and the sort of DNA of Charlton.
And finally, I mean, you mentioned about how well represented the club is in this sort of regard, and how in such high regard that they're held. I mean, yourself, you were added to the football blacklist this year, a slightly different sort of area that you were awarded for, but it is nice to see that the club and obviously yourself personally being recognised for the work that you are achieving.
No, absolutely, and thanks for mentioning that. And it's really a reflection of the club. You know, it's the work that we do collectively together as fans, as supporters, as players, as staff, the workforce. Is us collectively in unity. I've got a great quote here. If I can just find it. We did some research last year looking at EDI, and I think this really captures the spirit of Red, White and Black Day. And one of the fans, this is a quote from one of the fans who said, and I'm quoting here, Charlton Athletic is a club of the people. We are all different, but we're united together. And I think that really captures the really essence of what we're trying to achieve and what it really means.
And finally, I mean, you've mentioned there's the link up between the Community Trust and the Stephen Lawrence Day Foundation. I mean, how important is it that those two organisations are working together?
Really important. Baroness Doreen Lawrence has been a great supporter and ambassador of our work. She was here last year supporting Red, White and Black Day. And I think, you know, it's only fair for me to quote Baroness Lawrence this year, who has said, and I quote this, as part of the Stephen Lawrence Day Foundation, she has said she is tremendously proud of her partnership with Charlton Athletic and the efforts they've undertaken over the years to honour Stephen's memory by fostering diversity, inclusion and equity through initiatives like Red, White and Black Match Days. Now, I think that really captures why this is so important and what the great work that Charlton and the Stephen Lawrence Foundation have done together for a very long time.
Well, there we go. Massive thanks to Michael from the Community Trust for joining up with me during the week to have that conversation. And again, you know, it's one of the very few things as a club we can actually be proud of is what they do in the community. Upbeats Walk will be coming up at the end of this month as well, so get signed up to that. That's something that a lot of Charlton fans like to do, and we'll speak about that on the pod at the time as well. Right, let's refocus on Saturday's game with Shrewsbury at the Valley, and we're going to bring in this evening's guest, Ollie from Salopcast. And well, thanks for joining us, Ollie. Thanks for giving up your time on a Thursday evening. Obviously, the big question is it pronounced Shrewsbury or Shrewsbury? We've never worked that out over the 7 or 8 years we've been playing you guys now.
It's most definitely Shrewsbury. There's no O. It's an E.
Excellent stuff. Well, I'm glad we've got that sorted. How are you, Ollie? How are you feeling about the season? I said it before you came on, and I'll say it again a bit quieter. But normally, you guys are sort of perennial strugglers in this division. So presumably, you're pretty pleased with how this campaign's gone.
Yeah, we've had in recent years we've struggled with poor managers, poor recruitment, and yeah, we need to have good recruitment and a good managers for us to kind of punch above our weight in this division. Our wage bill is lower down the end of the scale, but yeah, it's been a fantastic season. I'm coming after Christmas, won 6 games in a row. And just flew up the league. It's been a very enjoyable season, and as you guys know, if you're winning games, it doesn't really matter how. Sometimes even actually not playing very well and scoring in the last few minutes of the game, sometimes even sweeter, a smash and grab. So yeah, it's been a really good season, and it's really important progression for Steve Cottrell, who has made continual progression under his leadership.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Steve. Obviously, what was it, a couple of years ago during the COVID crisis? He was very, very ill, and obviously I'm delighted to see him back on the touchline and doing really well. So he's one of those managers I've sort of taken to liking. He feels like quite an honest talker and wears his heart on his sleeve. I'm guessing the Salop fans are very pleased with the job that he's done over the last couple of years.
Yeah, he's quite a feisty figure, and he doesn't like losing. You kind of expect that from a football manager, but sometimes his distaste of losing has kind of come across in post-match interviews, which hasn't really adhered into the fans. But yeah, more recently, he's this season he's done really well. Recruitment in the summer was absolutely fantastic. He had a lot of credit in the bank. Obviously, if your manager's ill, and he was even managing us from the hospital bed. The guy's a football fanatic, we saw Aaron Wilbraham, our assistant manager, with AirPods on all the time, and apparently he was a nightmare for the nurses in the hospital. He came back, and we didn't really know how well he was. We kind of struggled that year. We didn't really do that well with recruitment. He's now had 2 full summers now with us, the recruitment we've had this year is fantastic. As you can see, we're obviously sitting ahead of Charlton in the league table.
Yeah, you don't need to remind us. 9 points off the playoffs with a game in hand. Are you still harbouring outside hopes?
You kind of love to dream, but no, we've got a tiny squad. Our best 3 players actually are injured. So Dan Odo up front, George Nurse, a left wing back, and Tom Bayliss got an ankle injury. He actually had an ankle surgery today. So we've lost some of our best players. And when you've got 15, 16 at a push pros in your squad, Steve Koch has gone for you guys know very well the budgets in this division, and we've gone for a kind of quality over quantity approach. And you get a few injuries, and it's kind of scuppered our season. So I can't see us having a push. And also, then if you look at our fixture list, we are going to have a big say if we get some results on who's going to go up, because we're playing Barnsley. We've got Peterborough again. We've definitely got Sheffield Wednesday coming up. We've got some big teams coming up.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned about that recruitment in the summer then. And again, I use you guys as like an example of how if you do it right, then you don't necessarily need the budget that we have. And whilst we're not exactly spending big money, we obviously haven't spent what we have spent very, very wisely. But you guys seem to. I mean, who are the sort of standout players that you've brought in this season that have sort of propelled you to the upper reaches of the table?
Yeah, we've had to sign some really good loan players. So we've got Taylor Moore on loan from Bristol City, who's played in a number of positions. He's been a really good addition. And we've got a lad called Sadie up front on loan from Bournemouth, who's a good striker. So loans have helped. And in January, we signed a player who I wouldn't be surprised if he did play in the Premier League. A guy called Kieran Phillips. He's like 6'3", really puts himself about. He's got a really nice touch. He's a really good central midfielder. And he joined, and he as soon as he started playing, we won those 6 games in a row. So he's been key. So loans have been really important for us. But in terms of actual signings, Shipley from Coventry, Bayliss from Preston have been 2 really, really key signings in the centre of the park. And then in defence, we've got Dunkley, who's been an absolutely class defender and come up with a few goals as well. He actually scored a volley from a corner near the penalty spot a few weeks ago, and when we were on that run. So yeah, the recruitment has been absolutely fantastic, because I don't know, I can't really think of a signing that hasn't really gone well this summer. It's been that good.
Yeah, I'd love to be in that position. I could list off reels of them. So finally, just looking into the game. So as it says on the ticker down the bottom, you're winless in your last 5 on the road, but maybe that doesn't tell the full story because you've played Ipswich, Peterborough, Derby in the last 3, and you got a handy draw down at Exeter. You have one defeat down at Accrington, which obviously you would have been disappointed with. But what sort of game will it be on Saturday? Do you come sit behind the ball, time waste, the sort of thing that away teams do in League One? Is that the sort of style you play on the road?
In terms of those results, so we came back from Derby 2 when we were 2-0 down, which is not a bad result. And then we should have beaten Exeter. We had a shot from about a metre out, and somehow we hit the crossbar. So we really should have picked up some more results in that period. We can time waste if we want to, but that's not normally our kind of. It's not we're not Accrington Stanley. That's not our standard way of playing. We're a pretty honest team, and we'll try and play football. We'll definitely play counter-attacking football. Sometimes we do surprise things. So we went to Plymouth earlier in the season, and Steve Coulter decided to play passing football, and I'm pretty sure we had more possession than them in the first half. It was really bizarre. So we've got a really, really talented bunch of players that can play all sorts of different ways. But our kind of default style of playing away from home is to be defensive and counter-attacking and let you guys have the ball.
Well, hopefully that will, in a way, play into our hands, but it doesn't really because we do struggle against teams who sit in at the Valley, and we'll see how it goes. Well, Ollie, thanks for your time, and best of luck for the rest of the season. Like I say, as we always say, after Saturday, and hopefully we'll see you again next year.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy yourselves.
Cheers. There we go. That's Ollie from Salopcast. I mean, got some good memories of playing Shrewsbury over the years, Nath. I was thinking back to. Obviously, we did go there and get knocked out in the playoffs, but I always remember this stupid Shrewsbury fan. Do you remember they got really wound up by Lee Bowyer in like the build up to the game, and they really hated us because of that, including the fans who didn't really care about Shrewsbury at all.
Weren't he wearing like an orange jumper or something like that, or a salmon pink jumper? Or am I making that up? I'm sure he wore some. No, not the Shrewsbury fan, because he's the one who went on the pitch and was just getting
there was loads of them. There was loads of them. There was one geezer that punched Lee Bowyer, actually, thinking about it. But there was one who tried to have a go at me and Ollie outside the ground just after they'd beaten us. And he saw us and he got so giddy seeing like Charlton badges that he could try and take the mick out of us. He went, have that, see you next season. And we were like, well, if you see us next season, that means you've lost the final, doesn't it? Which indeed they did. So there we go. I mean, out for revenge, Tom. That's how I'm feeling now ahead of Saturday.
Yeah, you got me proper pumped up now. I'll get my salmon jumper on and get down there, get on the pitch. I think it was the same season when we got into the playoffs. We went there towards the end of the season and won, and McGuinness scored right at the end of the game. I think it was a 2-0 win. So good memory of going there. And then obviously the away day for the playoffs, not so much. But it felt like for a little while, it was a bit like when we kept getting Huddersfield and MK Dons every single game in the cup, either cup, any cup, we were playing them two. It seemed like we had a little bit of a rivalry with Shrewsbury for a couple of seasons, and that goes back to the point goes back to the point I said right at the start of the show, doesn't it? That's pretty much who we've matched up against over the last few years. So it's not where we want to be, but it's where we are. And when he said then that they like to sit back and just let you have the ball, it's going to be a lot of Innis and Terrell and whoever, Hector at the back, just knocking it sideways, isn't it, for 90 minutes, I imagine. So, enjoy it, everyone. Hopefully people are a little bit more excited than I am. But, it's going to be a tough watch, I think, on Saturday.
Yeah. How do we find a way to beat? So I put it to Dean. Obviously, we said a few weeks ago about us not beating teams down the bottom. Obviously, this is a Shrewsbury side who are a bit better than us because they're above us in the table. But it sounds like, judging by what Ollie said then, if they'll play like a team down the bottom, they'll come and sit in and make it difficult. So how do we actually find a way to get around that? Obviously, we've beaten Morecambe and Cambridge down the bottom recently, but they were both away games where the other team would be expected to hold a little bit of control if necessary, and B, our goals came on counter-attacks in the game at Cambridge, the first one, certainly. But, how do we find a way to make it different on home turf? Because, Wickham we played okay, but that game against Accrington, which I fear could be more similar to what we're expecting this Saturday, was dire, and I don't want to see that again.
Yeah, no, well, I think it's a good thing that Bayliss isn't playing. So I didn't even know he was injured. He's a good player, Tom Bayliss. I mean, in terms of beating them, I suppose if he's said that they're going to sit in, and I assume if they're going to sit in, they're going to be narrow. That's naturally. The key way is go for your wide players. So Tyrese, maybe Sean Clare. I think someone said it earlier. You might actually see Albie coming outside if he starts playing as a sort of quarterback and letting Sean and Sess do their thing. Maybe I think that's the only way you're going to get in and around it, or use Miles' pace in behind. But yeah, I mean, hopefully we move the ball quicker, because if you play slowly across the back, like Tom was saying, they're just going to sit there. They're all set, and then you're just going to have a sideways sort of wait for something to appear. So yeah, I think the key is we're just going to try and go down the sides, try and move them about a bit, and hopefully one of them switches off, because as you said already, Lou, we struggle against teams who really sit in. Because we lack that unless you play Payno and hope for something in that little 10 role that he can come up something from nothing. But we're going to have to move the ball quickly anyway.
Yeah, I mean, ND Miller is saying we will see Aaron Henry on Saturday. And that's a question that people have asked quite a lot over the last few weeks, and obviously the answer pretty much every time has been no so far. I can't remember if he came off the bench recently, maybe once, but yeah, we ain't seen a great deal of him. Andrew's saying, I've seen a stat that Shrewsbury score from a lot of set pieces. It's not our strength defending these. Yeah, I think it's 12 now we've conceded from set pieces when I looked it up last week, Tom. So there's obviously an area that we can improve in. And it's not an area we should be struggling with, especially now that we've got Ryan Innes, who's massive, got Michael Hector, who's pretty tall, and Terrell Thomas. Like, if any of those in there, there's not really any excuse for conceding from set pieces. But we saw that one on Saturday against Wickham, Sean Clare completely losing his man. We still are guilty of these lacks of concentration.
Yeah, and I said it earlier. I think it's a case of, particularly at home, I think a lot of the games we've lost has been a case of us throwing them away. A lot of them set pieces, but just basic errors where we're just conceding very sloppy goals. And when you look at the emergence of someone like Ash in goal and some of the other players who Hector has been, okay since coming in, you're expecting more out of them as a unit, and we haven't really seen that. So yeah, if that's true, and they're you would expect, if they're a team that sit back, that they are going to try and be good at set pieces, because that might be the only opportunity they get in a game. Then obviously that's concerning, because as you say, that's one of the fragilities that we've got amongst a whole host of them at the moment. So yeah, I think we've got, as Nave said, we've got to try and play on the front foot. We've got to stay disciplined at the back and pick up our men at set pieces, and not let a 6'9" or whatever he was player just waltz into our middle of our 6-yard box and head it home, which you wouldn't think you'd need to tell professional players, but apparently we do. So yeah, it's those basics. I mean, it's not just those basics, it's a whole host of stuff that's gone wrong this season, but that's one of many things. And like I say, if they're going to be dangerous from set pieces, that's something we've got to be extra careful on.
Yeah, I mean, Johan saying thoughts on Dobson missing this game. Who's replacing him? I have to admit that's passed me by. I don't know if he's reached the yellow cards limit, but I did just ask someone at the club as well, and they weren't aware of that. So I'm hoping that you're wrong, Johan, and not us, and that we've missed it. Obviously, we'll find out in the lineup on Saturday. But I mean, if he does have to miss it, then that will be a frustration for us, because yeah, I mean, he's been up there. I was going to say, will he be Player of the Year again? I'm not sure. I did ask the question earlier if Miles is probably the Player of the Year. I think realistically as well, I mean, Jez should be in the running, but I think, I know we suffer from a massive lack of dignity these days, but surely we're not going to vote a Palace player as our Player of the Year, Nathan. Which way do you see that going?
Mate, listen, I think Jez has been brilliant. I really do. I think there was a point in the middle of the season where a lot of people were questioning him. I've been his biggest supporter. I think if Jez doesn't play well, or our wide players don't play well, we don't play well in general, to be fair. But I'd be amazed if we give Player of the Year to a Palace player. I just can't see it. I think Dobbo's the standout one. Miles is going to be up there. I think it'll be closer than last year. Put it that way. I think Dobbo won. I'm pretty sure he won by the biggest margin last year. I could be wrong, but it was a landslide if I remember. But yeah, I think Dobbo and Miles are the ones that stand out. Apart from that, scratching about it, isn't you, really? But surely we won't give it to but if we'll give him the young Player of the Year, well, either way, actually, no, Miles is going to win that, isn't he? So hopefully Dobbo gets it and Miles, but I won't be offended if he gets it. I'll just find it incredible that you're going to have like a Palace player on the little plaque or whatever. But to be fair to him, he's been brilliant, Jez, this year.
Yeah, no, it would, but that would sum us up really. How sad it is these days that we have to vote a Crystal Palace player as our player of the year. Right, we've run out of time on that sour note on this week's big match preview. Thanks to everyone who's joined us in the live stream, and as well to Ollie from Salop Cast. Thank you to Tom and to Nath. Good to speak to you guys as always.
Cheers,
Cheers,
lads.
boys.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Louis Mendes. Don't forget, we'll be back on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. on YouTube to look back at the game with Shrewsbury. Hopefully, we'll be chatting about 3 points. Thanks for everyone who joined us, and we shall see you later.